Okay, it looks like we have a good amount of attendees here, so we'll go ahead and get things started. So thank you everyone for joining us on this 43 North Small Business School virtual workshop session. We're excited to have brought this series. We've gotten a lot of really great attendance and participation so far. And so, it's really been just a great experience for us all on our team bringing it to you. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Christian Gaddis. I am the Senior Manager of Marketing and Recruitment for Forge Buffalo at 43 North. We're excited over on the Forge side because, just to make everyone aware, we have some openings in the 43 North family that we are posting for. So while I know a lot of you on this call probably aren't looking for anything yourself, if you know anybody that would like to join the 43 North family, please send them over to forgebuffalo.com and check out a lot of the great opportunities that we have available for them. So a few housekeeping things before we get started on this. We will be doing a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. If you do have questions, make sure you drop them in the Q&A feature. Do not use the chat. We won't check the chat for any questions. So just make sure for any questions you have, you place them in the Q&A feature. Also, we will be sharing this recording on the 43 North YouTube channel. So if you do ever want to go back and take a look at it, it will be posted there. You can also share that out with any friends or colleagues who you think might be interested in any of the content that was shared here today. So without further ado, I am going to kick it over to Patrick Finan. He is the principal at Block Club and the partner at our Oxford Pennant, and he'll go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Christian. Hope everyone's doing well today. Thanks for joining this morning. As Christian mentioned, we're going to do a dive into branding and branding 101 by exploring some of the essential elements of branding. Today's presentation is going to be about 30 to 45 minutes of some teachings on brand, and then we're going to get into a Q&A. So if you have questions, again, please save them for the end, and we'll try to get through as many as possible. If you can't make the entire chat today, this white paper that we're going to be looking through is available at blockclub.co/resources. Once again, that's blockclub.co/resources. This is available in full to download for free, along with a ton of other great content that you might be able to find there. As Christian mentioned, I'm Patrick Finan. I'm the co-founder and principal at Block Club. We're a brand strategy and content agency, been around for about 14 years here in Buffalo. I've worked on brands like Tommy Rotter, Hotel Henry, Labatt, M&T, Plaid, and many others, including 43 North. We actually did that branding many years ago before the competition got started. I'm also a partner at Oxford Pennant. You might have seen Oxford around, especially in our partnership with the Bills. It's a really cool, fun company that has done really well through Instagram and building a strong brand by connecting with its customers. What I'm here today to talk about is the fact that brands are created. They're not something that happen organically. They are thought through, and they're carefully executed on by the people who own them. If you think about brands like Target or Walmart, chances are that people in the audience today have a strong feeling towards one or the other. Southwest versus American Airlines, Apple versus Android. All of that isn't intentional. And it doesn't matter how big or small your business is, you have the opportunity to shape a powerful brand and build a powerful brand. And that's what we're going to talk through today in this essential elements of branding conversation. So let's get in and get started. Just a little bit of overview of today. We're going to talk about the need for strong brand platforms to start, talk about brand positioning, followed by brand pillars, get into personality, story, and then end with key messages and alignment. So to start, it's important to get on the same page that strong brands need strong platforms. This platform is what your business is built on, and it's how everyone comes to know and associate what you're all about. That all starts with something called a brand positioning statement. So a brand positioning statement is one of the most important components of a brand. And it's something that many small business owners and fast-growing business owners often skip right over in an effort to kind of get started as much as possible. A brand positioning statement answers the question, how do you want customers to think about your brand in relation to other brands that are out there? And it has four main components: a target, frame of reference, points of differentiation, and reasons to believe. We're going to explore each of those in a minute, but I want to give you an example first with a brand that many of us know. So let's think about Speedo. We've all heard of Speedo. We know that it's worn by Olympians. We know that it's something that you can buy. And Speedo is more than just a tiny bathing suit. It's a whole brand. But I want to read Speedo's positioning statement for you, and then we're going to dissect it and apply it to your brand and your company. So if we were to develop a positioning statement for Speedo, it might look something like this. For competitive swimmers looking to shave seconds off their record time, Speedo Performance Swimwear is superior because each garment is specifically designed to maximize individual athletic achievement. And we do this by using proprietary state-of-the-art technology in order to promote optimal hydrodynamic motion and reduce friction in the water. And that's why more Olympians choose Speedo over other performance swimwear brands. So if you take a look at what's on screen, you'll see that we're defining the target, the frame of reference, and the points of differentiation, and lastly, the reasons to believe. And you can start to see how using this positioning statement to really shape the brand, to have it serve as your North Star, could start to manifest in ways from the products that Speedo puts out on the marketplace to things like advertisements. You know, in order to get this positioning statement across, you could have Michael Phelps holding up a gold medal in a Speedo, and that's all they need to show to communicate what they're setting out to communicate right here. So we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into those 4 components, starting with the target. So the target for a brand is who you are targeting. Who is your audience and who you're going after? When you're deciding on your target, we don't want you to think about who you want to target. It's who you should target. That means figuring out who your competitors are speaking to and deciding if there's room among them for your brand to get a word in edgewise. If they're not, find someone else. We want to make sure that it isn't so niche or so small that it throttles your revenue potential, but not too big that it's not specific enough, doesn't appeal to anyone. So as I'm going through this, I'd love for you to jot down who your target is, who you're appealing to. And if there's multiple audiences within that target, think about what is the connective tissue that holds them all together and unites them. Next is the frame of reference. And the frame of reference helps define what your brand is in relation to other brands so that consumers in your target audience understand how your brand will serve their goals. Bigger picture, how they should think of your brand. So for Speedo, for example, their frame of reference is performance swimwear. But let's talk about 2 other brands, Uber and Lyft. Some of you out there might be startups and you might be the first to kind of define a new category. And it's great to look at this ride sharing example as something for emerging brands and technologies. When Uber first launched, since they were first to market, they could position themselves and use the frame of reference of an alternative to taxis. That's because the ride sharing industry wasn't yet established. But with Lyft, when Lyft launched, Lyft could position themselves a few years later as a ride sharing app because people knew what ride sharing was at that time. So what's your frame of reference? And how are you going to define your brand in relation to other brands that are in the same competitive space? Then we get into the points of difference. So this one's pretty easy. How is your brand different, or how is your brand better than other brands? Another question you can ask yourself is, how is it unlike other brands in a way your target audience will find it meaningful or appealing? So what starts to set you apart? Identifying your brand's points of difference requires understanding how your competitors position themselves too. So look at your competitors who are out there and think about how you're different or how you want to be different from them. This doesn't matter if you are a tech company or a restaurant. if you are an agency like me, or if you are a manufacturing company. We all have competitors, and I think it's really important to understand how we're different and how we can stand apart. And lastly, the reasons to believe. So we've defined the target, we've defined the frame of reference, we've defined the points of differentiation. Why should our target believe us? If you go back to the Speedo example, we're talking about that more Olympians use and trust Speedo. That's a great reason. That's a big reason too. I can't say that Olympians trust my company, but I can say that I've been around for 14 years. I can say that I've done work with other brands that are well respected. And so think about why customers, why your target audience should believe what you're putting out there so that you can have an authentic message. If you weren't jotting down notes, or if you need to talk to some partners about it, I'd love for you to take the time after this class to think about what your brand position will be. As you saw with Speedo, it's just a long sentence, a couple of ideas strung together. It's different than your mission statement. It's different than your vision statement. A positioning statement is really used as your North Star. This should be used to guide all of your marketing decisions going forward. It's something that only you and the internal team at your organization use and see, but it's something that will shape the outward expression of your brand, the marketing that you put out there, the experience that people have when they're in your business or interacting with it. And it's really great to have this in your back pocket, because as you're coming up with new ideas, as you're coming up with new tactics or marketing plans, or even ways to expand your business, you can just run it through your position and say, does this help us achieve our positioning or not? It can be a really great tool to also align disparate stakeholders when we all have different ideas about what might be the next best step forward for our business, especially when it comes to marketing. This is the most important part of branding, and it's often something that small businesses skip right over. So if you don't have this, and if there's one thing you take away today, it would be that I ask you to develop a positioning statement to use it to guide everything going forward. So next we get into brand pillars. And I bet that if you don't have a positioning statement, you do have some brand pillars that have been written down and articulated. These are the things that really give shape to your brand. They represent your brand's qualities, the tenets, and values. And externally, unlike the positioning, brand pillars can really help inform your client-facing persona and the tone of voice that you take. And internally, you can use them to unify employees around some common values and ideals. So we're all representing the same brand in our jobs and to the customers that we're helping. So when you're trying to shape your brand pillars, there's a few questions that we often ask clients to ask themselves. They are, what makes your brand and the people who use it special? What ethics or principles govern how you operate, conduct business, or relate to others? What positive difference does your brand strive to make in the lives of your customers? And what motivates your brand to strive towards that specific positive difference? What promise does your brand make to your customers and consumers? And how do you want your consumers to think of your brand, and how do you want them to talk about it? Asking yourself these questions will give you a list of pillars that you can start to put into action and share as kind of those core components that are holding up your brand and representing all of the people, all of the ideas that make it up. So after brand pillars, we ask our clients to start thinking about their brand personality. This is a fun exercise, and it's based on the idea of archetypes, these 12 universal mythical characters that help organize and understand the different types of human personalities. At some point along the way, people decided to apply these to marketing as well. I'm going to leave these up on the screen for a moment. There's 2 pages of them, so I'll leave this one up first and then skip over to the next one. But as you're taking a look at these different archetypes, start to ask yourself if your business, not necessarily yourself, but if your business identifies with any one of these. So I think we all know those hero brands, right? Especially in tech, brands that want to change the world for better or help others effectuate change. Those confident, inspirational, and honorable brands. Or brands like the Explorer, brands that revel in discovery and adventure and help people have new experiences. Those trailblazing, self-determined, and sometimes thrill-seeking brands. So for us at Block Club, we identify with the Sage, which is in the bottom right-hand corner, a brand that helps people understand the world or some aspect of it, informational, trusted, and analytical. It's one of the reasons why I'm giving this presentation today. And in some ways, the Ruler, brands that organize or bring stability and security to disorder. They take charge, are pragmatic, and are meticulous. Oftentimes, we're brought in to help clean up a mess or a problem that a business is having and help them solve that business problem through the work that we do. If I look at Oxford Pennant, our other company, we're more like the Jester and the Explorer. You know, we're a fun company at Oxford. We're a brand that promotes fun and good humor, joyful, lighthearted, and sometimes irreverent or sarcastic. So again, take a moment to look at these and ask yourself, what does your brand identify with? And what's your archetype? So once you select your archetype, you can, if you're having trouble selecting your archetype, rather, you can ask yourself, who would your customer best respond to? You know, which one might align with your mission or be authentic to your mission? And, you know, one thing I want to talk about here too is that oftentimes when we're talking with small businesses, the owner or the manager of the business has trouble divorcing themselves from the business themselves. You know, oftentimes the business is a reflection of their personality, and that's great. I mean, that's that authenticity that we're looking for. But in order for businesses to grow from where they are to the next level, whatever that level is, it's really important for businesses to start to think about what is it that their customer wants, or what is it about my own personality that my customer likes, and how can I give my business more of that? One of the reasons why this is so important is that as you start to hire employees, you know, and as your business grows, sometimes you get further away from the customer. Sometimes you're dealing with internal issues and hiring and problems as opposed to delivering great customer service or being the face of your business. And when that happens, what we want as business owners and what we want as leaders and managers or people in charge of the brand is we want to make sure that everyone who's interacting with our customers is delivering a consistent experience that, you know, aligns with what the customer wants and what they need and what you're proud of. What you don't want to be is a business owner that always has to get involved or a leader that always has to get involved because there's a problem with customers. You know, there's a lack of understanding, or they don't like the way that an employee is talking to them, or it's different from what they've come to expect over the years. All of that can be taught and trained, and it just takes time to kind of articulate these things and get them out for you to be able to build a uniform experience for your brand and for your customer. So going back to what we talked about in the beginning, what is it that you like about Target or Apple or Southwest Airlines? Why is it every time you get on a flight, you have a consistent experience? Or when you go into a Target store in California or New York, you have the same sort of experience? What is it that people like about Wegmans versus Tops? You know, people are so loyal to Wegmans, for example. Why do people think it's one of the best grocery stores in the world? It's because you have a great experience, and that's the Wegmans brand. So you can do the same thing too. After archetype, after you're selecting it, it's pretty cool because you can start to put this into action, and you can consider what kind of qualities would your brand have if it were a person. You could ask yourself these questions, like what's the brand's backstory? What are its fears, its desires, and motivations? How does your brand feel about specific issues that are important to your audience or industry? And how does your brand live life? What's its attitude towards the everyday? How does it act in scenarios relevant to your audience and your industry? And if your brand had a motto to live by, what would it be? Once you have that brand personality mapped out, you'll want to develop some guidelines for applying that personality to those marketing communications or to employee training. And you can map out a couple do's and don'ts. We also advise clients to write out like a writing style guide that maps out vocab to use and tone and voice. I had an instance a couple months ago where I was working with a tech company in San Francisco, and the owner of the tech company, the CEO, one of the founders, is just a real brash guy. He is super fun to talk to, but he's dropping f bombs, and he's really competitive and really sarcastic. And when I was talking to him, and then talking about the customers they're dealing with, which are banks and kind of financial institutions, you could tell that his personality and the personality of some of these more conservative businesses he was working with didn't quite add up. So one of the first things we had to do with them is go through this exercise, really think about the customer first, and write a voice and tone and style guide for everyone in his organization on his marketing team to follow, and also to kind of keep him in check too. So he wasn't coming in with his own ideas and pushing everything off track. Now, one thing that we did there though, because he has a lot of ideas that he wants to share and he has a great personality, that's why people like him. It's just maybe not the right one for the brand. We were able to develop some thought leadership content for him, set him up with a blog where he can act as a tech CEO and kind of speak his mind and say what he wants, and let his personality shine through. But he's speaking as himself and not the brand. And so if you are a big personality and it isn't exactly what your customers need, there are other creative ways to express yourself, and make sure your voice is heard, and also respect the needs of the brand and the other people working with you, who are trying to deliver a unified message that meets the customers where they are and gives them what they need. After archetype, we like to move along to brand story. And in the brand story, we're really trying to encompass the who, the what, and the why of the brand. We're developing a clear public-facing narrative that gets to the heart of who your brand is and gives people something to believe in and buy into. If you are like me and you like listening to How I Built This on NPR, about founders and their stumbles and successes, what we love about that is it's a great story. It's their life story, but it's also the story of their brand. This is one of the reasons why people like independent companies and often will spend more money with small businesses or take the time to stop at a main street business than just go to the big box store that offers free delivery or curbside pickup. It's because people fall in love with the story. And so it's really important that we're communicating the story to the audience that we're looking to serve. It's what makes you special. So when you're writing your story, you can ask yourself the following questions. The first thing is, what change in the world catalyzed your brand into existence? So we often hear those classic entrepreneur stories. I was working for someone else and I had said, screw it, I need to start something better or different, or I realized there was a problem. So what got you into this in the first place? And if you're not the founder of the brand that you're working to support, what was the reason for the founding of this? At my company, we actually started as a magazine. We didn't start as an agency. We started as a magazine in 2007 because we wanted to tell stories of this kind of the time rumblings of a renaissance that was happening in Western New York. And over time, we morphed into the agency because people liked the way that our magazine looked and asked us to design ads and work on their logos and whatnot. And we realized that was a great business opportunity and kind of started to move in that direction. But what is it that catalyzed, your startup, your business? What got you to where you are? You can think about this for yourself too. If you're thinking about building your own personal brand, what was it that kind of inspired you to move to that different city or take that chance? Who did you meet along the way that pushed you? So really kind of great questions to ask yourself and ask your brand. What new forces or what new ways of thinking or doing does your brand address or solve for? Was there a change in the world, for example? The idea here is to capture a common problem or source of anxiety that will resonate with your target customer or connect with them or inspire them. So the second question that we like to ask clients is, in the context of that change, what opportunity does your brand create? And here the idea is to flip the script from one of anxiety to one of possibility. Just avoid making big, audacious claims that your brand can't realistically fulfill. People like authenticity. And then what evidence can you offer to support the idea that your brand creates new opportunities, potential, or possibilities for your target audience? Why should they believe you? I wanted to share an example with you for Rent the Runway. If you don't know Rent the Runway, it's a women's clothing site that allows you to rent dresses. You can get them for a weekend event as opposed to having to go out and buy a several $100 dress that you might only wear once. So oftentimes if people have like a special event or a wedding, they might rent a beautiful dress that they use for a weekend and then send it back and someone else can use it. Their story is kind of interesting. I wanted to share it because I think it really illustrates the answers to the questions that we're asking on the previous slide. So when we're able to wear what makes us feel our best, we can be our best selves and in turn live our best lives. Yet we've had to compromise. We've spent a lot of time and money on our clothes, but never had what we wanted. And what's the result? A closet full of clothes and nothing to wear. We are changing that by building the world's first and only closet in the cloud, a dream closet filled with an infinite selection of designer styles. Imagine every trend, every color, every print, everything you've ever wanted to wear. Some call it fashion freedom. We call it a fashion revolution. With an unlimited closet, women can more freely express themselves and dress for the incredible lives they lead, whether that's a special look for a big event or rotating outfits for every day. We believe that renting is the future of getting dressed, and we're only getting started. So that's a story designed to kind of explain why they exist and connect with their target audience. One of the last things that we like to help clients with when we're trying to build these brand foundations are key messages. Key messages are really important because they take everything you've done and distill it down into these a few high-level talking points. I want to give you a couple examples of why this is important. Sometimes, actually many times, when we're brought in to talk to businesses, if you ask the CEO and the person who works at the front desk, the head of marketing, and maybe a customer service facing employee, what the company is or how to describe the company, you might get a different answer for every single person that you talk to. And that's really problematic because that means for the customer, their idea of the company or how they perceive the company is going to be dependent on who they talk to. And that's not something that is healthy for any business. So that's hard when you have a 5 or 10 or 20 person business, but imagine what happens when that's 100, 500 or 1,000 person business. The problem just gets bigger and bigger. And there's more and more confusion in the marketplace. Trust me when I say we've been brought in to solve this problem with companies of hundreds and thousands of employees. The more employees you have, the bigger and more expensive the bill to fix this gets. It involves training and teaching and reteaching. And you know, people are creatures of habit. Once they have an idea, they have their little elevator pitch down, it's really hard to get them to change. So taking the time to distill the brand or distill big ideas into a few talking points gets everyone on the same page, everyone moving in one direction, and everyone speaking with one voice. That's critical to any brand's success. So when you walk into the Apple store, you more or less get the same overarching idea of what Apple is compared with the commercial that you see, with the what Tim Cook, the CEO, is saying on the stage. And you know, if you call the customer service number, if you ask any employee at Apple what it is, you'll get relatively the same answer. It doesn't have to be verbatim, but it's all kind of giving you the same big picture. Another thing that's really important here is some of you might have investors or boards that you have to answer to. Some of you might be in charge of training employees that are coming on board. It's really easy to kind of get everyone on the same page because typically people who are involved with your organization want to represent you in the best possible way. And they can have the tools that they need to do this. So some people ask, should I have an elevator pitch? Some people ask, how many talking points should I have? And what I like to tell people is that, think about this as like, the amount of time that you would have in front of somebody. If you have an elevator pitch, it's designed to pique their interest. So give me a sentence that describes your business. Oh, that's interesting. Tell me a little bit more. Well, then give me the following 2 or 3 points that, just kind of round out that overarching idea of your organization. And lastly, if someone's really interested, give me a little bit more than that. What's your story? Where are you going? How did you get into this? That's how you should think about talking points, from the first one being the most important to the maybe number 2 through 5, kind of rounding out that initial thought. And anything after that is all just gravy, giving people who are really interested in your business a little more for them. We're almost at the end of the presentation, so we're going to have more time for Q&A, which is awesome. But one of the things I wanted to talk about here is the importance of alignment. So at most companies, decisions like this are not going to be made by one person. Even if you're the sole proprietor or sole owner of an organization, chances are you've got a few kind of deputies who work underneath you or work alongside you, your right-hand person. You might have investors or board members, and you might have a team, a leadership team, or you might be a marketing person that has to answer to a leadership team or your boss. And it's really, really important that the major stakeholders of a company are involved in the decisions and the components that we talked through today. Because if the CEO of the company is talking about the business in one way, the marketing director is talking about it in another way, and the board member is talking about it in a third way, you're all moving in different directions, and that's not good for anybody. Some people also have really strong opinions about brand and ideas. And what you don't want to happen is do some of this work and then someone just says, well, I don't like it. That's not true. I'm not going to follow that. I'm not going to use it. So when you're looking at the white paper, and if you go to blockclub.co/resources, we have a great blog post on the importance of building alignment. We think that alignment is one of the most important steps in kind of building a strong brand, because as I said, the whole idea of this is to kind of get everyone on the same page, get everyone speaking with one voice, and do what's best for your customers and obviously for the business too. So if you are from an organization where you often have trouble with communication, or people are on kind of different pages at different times, or if you're an organization where you're generally all like really excited and have tons of ideas that you're brimming with, or maybe an organization that gets along great, I would strongly suggest you take a minute to read through our blog post on the importance of building group alignment. We have some techniques in there that can be really helpful, including how to make sure everyone's heard, who to involve in the process that we just outlined, and ensuring that there's group consensus while still delivering something special and actionable and not something that's watered down. When you arrive at a strong and sound brand platform, if you use it correctly and you implement it, it'll really help control how your brand is perceived by the people who you care about the most and who care about your brand the most. And that's the target audience, your customers who you're looking to serve. So that's it for my presentation today. I'm going to open it up to Q&A. And again, for anyone listening, you can go to blockclub.co/resources for this and white papers on social media, content marketing, more about branding, and tons of other information that I think will be helpful for any growing business out there.
Thanks, Patrick. And yeah, I just shared that link in the Q&A to answer that question also. So it is out there. If anyone needs it, we'll make sure to post it on in the comments of the YouTube video when we share this as well. So that way everyone knows where they can go to access it. So far we have a question in the Q&A here, and I'll just go ahead and read it to you. It says, as a concert promoter, how can my branding make a difference? I'd really like to communicate to my broad audience that you'll have the best concert experience if you come to my shows. How can I position this message?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I always tell people to kind of avoid really broad phrases like the best, because all of us have different ideas about what the best means. If you're someone who really cares about like audio quality, the best could be how's the sound. If you're someone who cares about service, it could be like, what's the food and drink situation like there. If you're someone who wants to be like, right in the center of it all, what's the seating or like what's the ticketing system like? How close to the stage can I get? What I think is really important in that instance is to think about what makes your venue or your shows or your experience, whatever it is, unique. What is special and unique and different about the way you put on shows, you promote shows, or the venue or venues where you host shows that's different from that of your competitors? Maybe it's all about service. Maybe it's about the type of acts that you bring in. Maybe it's about the quality of the sound or the intimacy that people have with the performer. That's what's important to define. When you make statements like the best, it starts to kind of wash it out and not mean anything. And so I would push you to think about, who is it that you're targeting? What is it that they're looking for, and what is it that they need? And lastly, what is it that you're doing differently, better than your competitor? And thinking about those things and how to kind of position them all together, because that is how you will be able to build a brand positioning statement that's sustainable, that's actionable, and actually means something to the people that you're targeting.
Awesome. Great. So the next question is, Nancy says, I am a sole proprietor in a niche business. I still feel that I need a brand and consistency in how I present myself. Don't you?
So could you read that one more time, Christian?
Sure. So it sounds like so she's a sole proprietor in a niche business, and she feels that she needs a brand and consistency in how she presents herself. And she's asking or not.
If I agree with if someone should have like a,
I think it's like, don't you, and kind of I'm thinking, and what I'm assuming here is also just, how would you do that too?
Yeah, give me one sec too, because I'm just my earpods are dying, so I'm gonna switch these off.
No problem.
Okay. Can you hear me okay, Christian?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Fantastic. All right. So I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's going to be, is it important to develop a brand if you're a sole proprietor? And I would say absolutely. There's an opportunity too, as a sole proprietor and as an independent business person, to grow your business over time, to bring employees on, and those employees are going to need to know who they're working for, what their role is, what they're trying to achieve, and what the brand is. So even if right now you're kind of independent or it's a small business, I still think there's a lot of power in branding. And I also think that you can do this exercise in a slimmed down version, because if it's just you or just a small team, you don't necessarily need like this gigantic brand guide that you need to follow. But I do think it's important to constantly go back to, who are you servicing? What makes you different? What makes you valuable? What are your customers looking for? How are you doing this differently than your competitors? What's your competitive edge? Those are also things that, whether you're an individual business person, sole proprietor, or a big company, allow you to charge more. I think about a friend of mine who owns a PR firm. It's just her, sole proprietor. And she has, over the years, made herself so invaluable to her clients that she's been able to charge more. She's been able to kind of book all her time, which helps her maximize her income. And she also has really made sure that she's developed a great reputation for delivering incredible service. And those are some of the things that set her apart from some of her competitors.
Cool. Okay, so then the next question is, do you have any advice for online community building that worked for you with Oxford Pennant?
Yeah, sure. So my partner Dave is one of the co-founders of Oxford, and Dave, Brandon, and I are partners at Block Club, and Dave, Brett, Brandon, and I are partners at Oxford. Dave handles the social media, and even as Oxford's grown, he's really wanted to have a major hand in managing that. I think, one of the things I'm trying to get him to do is to ensure that all of Oxford's personality is enshrined in many of the things that we've gone over today, because at some point, I don't know how long he'll be able to manage that. Oxford's community has grown to about 150,000 followers on Instagram, and it's really, there's a lot of participation from our fans and from our customers. One of the things that's been really key to building that community at Oxford is focusing on featuring the things that our customers are making, the ways that they're using our pennants and flags and banners, and by developing under that jester personality archetype that I mentioned, a really fun back and forth kind of funny camaraderie with our customers. We don't take ourselves too seriously at Oxford. And we also want to make sure that as people are commenting or asking questions, we're able to make sure that they're heard from us and we're engaging with them. So again, in Oxford's case, because we're selling a really visible or like a tactile product that people hang in their homes, we always want to make sure we're showing off the things that people are making, whether it's a banner for a wedding or like maybe something they're putting in their office or their kids' room, something they got for one of their friends or family members. We're sharing that content that they're sharing with us, and we're taking a really kind of like lighthearted approach to marketing and ensuring that we're engaging with and interacting with as many of the people who are commenting. Just a backstory on Oxford too, because I know it has a lot of followers now, but when Oxford was getting started about 7 years ago, and Instagram was obviously a smaller platform than it was now, that is the strategy that helped us grow from no followers to 150,000 followers. And it's something that we still do today, sharing people's creations, sharing what they're doing with our product, and having fun.
Yeah, that user generated content is always a great way to connect with people. It's kind of, it's the modern day equivalent of hanging your kids' artwork up on the fridge. It's kind of like when you do that, everyone feels super special. And so it's a great way to connect with people. I think that's a really great message.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then let's see here. The next one is, how can I develop a brand that feels authentic and personal, but keep myself out of the limelight?
Okay, cool. Well, without knowing what kind of business that you're in, I think there's a lot of ways to do that. If we go back to that positioning work up front, and you think about who your customer is and what their needs are, what your product is and how it's different from your competitors, and why people should believe what you're saying, you can develop a brand positioning statement that anyone in your organization should be able to deliver on. And you can make the decision when you're deciding what your archetype is and what your key messages are to leave yourself out of it. And that's totally fine. We often talk about at Block Club, the strength of our team. And we don't talk about like the founders, any one of my colleagues at Block Club could give this presentation, because this is something that we teach internally and everyone knows at Block Club internally. I just happened to be asked to give this. We wanted to build a company that wasn't like, cult of personality with like the CEO, because I don't think that's a sustainable way to grow the business. So for example, one of the reasons why our name is Block Club and not the Finan Agency or Finan Group or Finan Davis Porish Agency or whatever is because we wanted to make sure that, we as the owners or the founders weren't the face of the brand. We're just a teammate like everybody else. So that's one way that when you're even naming your company, what's the name of it? Is your last name in there? When you go into your story, you can still talk about why you got started without mentioning your name or your individual self in there. And you can connect with your customers because you're providing them with something that they need in a way that is like authentic and honest and real and good. And all of that can be delivered by other employees in your organization and you. And so you don't have to write your brand story around there. I realize too, for smaller companies, it's a little more difficult, but like there was a time when Block Club was just 2 of us and then 3 of us. And, now there's 16 of us. So that is something that we decided 14 years ago that was important and, kept building the business from there.
Cool. Okay, so the next question is, we are a cancer research company with a novel therapeutic and medical device. The target audience is the physicians that would be interested in the device, but there is also an interest in appealing to people who may be touched by cancer in their lives. Which is a better target audience?
Yeah. So that's always a tough one. In some ways, you might be considered like a B to B to C, a business to business to consumer brand, even if our audience is the physician group, because the demand might need to come from the patients in some cases. So what I think is really important there is to make a decision to pick the audience that you're going after, who your customer is. And it sounds like in this case, it's physicians. One of the problems that can happen when you don't kind of plant that flag and decide who your target audience is you can develop messaging that is not strong enough because it kind of is shaking on, because it's not on a strong foundation, right? You're kind of like pivoting from one to the other. So you're developing messaging that isn't strong enough, a brand that doesn't resonate with, or content that doesn't connect with the target audience in the best possible way. And the problem is, if you don't do that, then someone else will come along who will do that, who will speak more directly to the benefits that, physicians need, et cetera. So my advice when a company, is something that they have to sell to a physician, a distributor, or whatever, but a customer's buying it, is make sure you're developing messaging to the person who's paying you. That's really, really important. Now, you can say, for example, that, for physicians who use this device, and I'm sorry, I'm not a doctor, I have any knowledge of medicine, so forgive me, but for physicians who use this device, they'll be able to provide great care to their patients, which in turn will help their patients lead longer, healthier, better, happier lives or whatever. And you could take some of that messaging and ensure that in places like your website, there's a page that says, for patients, or in a brochure that you have one that the physicians can give to patients so they can understand the benefits of your company or this product or service. But the important thing there is to think about who's paying you, who is your main customer, where's your money coming from, who do you really have to appeal to the most, develop everything for them, and then consider, are there a few auxiliary components of our marketing that could speak to this kind of sub audience or secondary, tertiary audience, just in case, they end up on our website and need to understand what's in it for them. If you are a bigger company, or as you become a bigger company with a larger marketing department, it can become easier to kind of really deliver great messaging for both audiences. But for most small businesses, and I'm talking about even companies with hundreds of employees and 10, 20 person marketing departments, it's very, very difficult to kind of straddle those two disparate audiences. And typically what happens is it gets watered down and then kind of fail because you're not doing the best thing for the main audience where your money's coming from.
All right, so let's see here. Up next, would you say that a pivot or shift in customer base / target audience triggers a rebrand? They said, I'm imagining a business built around a solid product whose product market fit is evolving. Is there a strategy to consider in a circumstance like this?
Great question. So in that case, I tend to think about rebranding when there's a business problem, not necessarily when the business changes. So great example of a rebrand. We were working on a large staffing company called Aileron. And they used to be called Superior Group. And when Superior Group grew over several decades, they started as a talent company and a staffing company and then a workforce solutions company. And every single one of the companies said, superior talent, superior workforce solutions, superior, IT resources. And so what happened in the world is that the staffing side, superior talent, became so synonymous with the name superior that other superior businesses were losing opportunity because people would hear the name and think, okay, well, why are they applying for this RFP? They're responding to it. This is a staffing company. This isn't what we need. And so they weren't giving them, any attention. And so there was a real business problem there. And that was the cause for the rebrand. So Superior Group became Aileron, Superior Talent became Bacara, Superior Workforce Solutions became Broadleaf, and Superior IT Innovations became Loom. There is a family of brands that could all ladder up to the same, ideals and main messages, but each individual brand had its own lane to play in, its own target audience, and could really be competitive within the space that it served. That was a reason for a rebrand. When you're talking about maybe changing or pivoting your solution or your product or offering, I'd urge you to first think about repositioning the company. To go back to, that's why it's the first thing we went into. Think about, well, who's your target audience now? What are their needs? And how is my product or service better than what else is out there? Helping them in a more effective way. Why should people believe this? And then you can start to have the conversation. Is our name so entrenched in people's minds as X that they won't believe that it's Y? Or is it a natural evolution and we need to change our positioning, maybe our archetype and some of our key messages, and redevelop our website or some of the marketing materials out there, make sure we're sending emails to our clients so they know what we're doing now? I would urge you to start there before you go down the full rebrand route, because you're going to have to do that anyways. With a rebrand, any good person who's working on a rebrand should be talking to you about positioning first before they start just developing like logo concepts. And if you notice today, I have not said logo one time. I've not brought up logo. At least I don't think I brought up a logo one time. Logo is not your brand. All the things that we talked about today are your brand. The logo that you have, that new visual identity, all that does is just encapsulate all the things that we talked about today. It stands for these things. It makes people think of these things, but your brand is not your logo. So if you're thinking about spending all that money and time on a rebrand, I'd urge you to think about repositioning first and then start to have the conversation about rebrand.
I can verify I don't remember hearing logo at all, so I'm pretty sure you're good on that claim.
All right, good, glad.
So we're on to our last question in the Q&A here. And it is, as a startup law firm, we're trying to make inroads with younger clientele than a traditional firm. And there are very strict rules around attorney marketing / advertising. Can you speak on any word of mouth or community-based strategies for companies with these type of goals?
Yeah, sure. I know there's a lot of restrictions. We've done attorney advertising before. And we also have worked in banking and we work with a company in Seattle that does CBD dog treats and cat treats and beer companies and liquor companies, and there's all different rules and whatnot. But unlike other businesses, depending on what kind of law you practice, if it's, let's say, business law, or your customer is a young professional who might be a business owner or making legal decisions for the company they work for, and you're in a B2B space, one of the best ways to really solidify your positioning is through thought leadership marketing. And that's how you can really start to build a strong brand and a strong reputation. So again, I'd urge you to go back to some of the basics we went through today, especially the archetype, and really defining who your customer is and what are their unique needs. When you talk about, being younger, different, or appealing to a younger audience and whatnot, what are the things that unite that audience together? I'm maybe younger than some of my contemporaries who own other agencies, might be older than some, but when you're saying that, is it young in heart, youthful, et cetera? And do they still want to make money, or do they want to change the world, or what is it that they want to do? And getting those things mapped out and finding those similarities with like the business you want to be are really, really important to start. In attorney advertising, thought leadership is great because you're showing who you are, you're showcasing your people, the talent that's on your team. And in a professional services organization, people are paying top dollar for great people. And so how can that manifest itself? You could run great inbound campaigns where you have awesome thought leadership content online. You could highlight your staff through Q&As or videos, and they could be, a little more creative and a little more fun. They don't have to start everything with, well, when I was at Harvard, I got this degree or whatever. Can kind of get into connecting like person to person, what makes that person unique. You could also do talks like this, right? You can find opportunities to speak and showcase the talent on your team and the ideas that you have, and ensure that you are representing yourself in the way that you want to be perceived by your target audience. So today, I didn't show you guys the work that we do at Block Club. I didn't show you, I listed a few of the brands we work with, but my point today, just kind of bring this back to the law firm, it wasn't to show off like how cool the stuff is that we make. When we think about Block Club, we think about it as like a very measured, process-driven, creative firm that is excellent at brand strategy. Then the cool creative stuff comes out of there. This is the foundational work that's super important. And so I hope that today, by listening to me, you all walked away with that impression that, we're really all about the basics and the foundations before we get into, anything that's really visually interesting and exciting and cool to look at. The reason why when you go into a restaurant that we've designed, or a hotel, or, have experienced one of the brands that we've worked on, why they look so great and they feel so great is because all this work's done. So bringing that back to the law firm, if you want to be perceived as fun or young or interesting or smart or whatever it is, and connect with an audience that also has the same values, then just think about like, when you talk, when you write, when someone goes to your website, are you guys all wearing suits and ties, or are you doing something different? Are you presenting yourself in a different way? That's one of the things that I would urge you to do is, not just say that you want to connect with a certain audience or that you want to be perceived in a certain way, but show that through the way that you express yourself and the way that you're acting. I think that'll form that more authentic connection. And also in speaking and presenting yourself and your professional opinions about things, I think that also, in my experience, is a way that you can kind of get through any of the hurdles that come through, the industry standards, best practices, regulations, those sort of things.
Cool. Awesome. Yep. So we're right up on time here. So I just want to thank everyone for joining this small business school session. It was definitely a lot of great messages in the Q&A and the chat saying how much everyone appreciated it, and it was a timely message and everything. So we're very happy to have been able to been able to share this. And Patrick, we appreciate you bringing your expertise and sharing it with us as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone who listened. Thanks everyone who asked the questions. I appreciate your time, Christian, and 43North for hosting this today. And again, if anyone has needs any more info, blockclub.co/resources. Tons of good stuff there. And I also welcome anyone to email me any questions if they didn't have a chance to get those answered today.
Absolutely. And again, if you want to rewatch this presentation, it will also be posted on the 43North YouTube channel. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be getting it up shortly. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.